Hey friends, Bobby Medina here with my dear friend, the great Paul Barron, and we have a wonderful guest with us today that you are going to love. He has been a regular at the Preservation Hall in New Orleans and a featured performer with Harry Connick's orchestra. Leroy's performed on every continent in every major U.S. city and at prestigious theaters, festivals, jazz clubs, like the Village Vanguard in New York City, etc. His television appearances include The Tonight Show, Good Morning America, Late Night with David Letterman, and so many more. He's also a regular at the world-famous New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, as well as the French Quarter Fest and the Satchmo Summer Fest. He's also appeared on the soundtrack of the smash hit movie Sleepless in Seattle, starring actor Tom Hanks, if you remember that one. He has released a series of wonderful recordings, including his CD called Props for Pops, his tribute to Louis Armstrong, Back to My Roots, Mo Cream from the Crop, Soft Shoe, and Sweeter Than a Summer Breeze. He's also appeared on numerous recordings with other artists such as Dr. John, who's one of my favorites, the Preservation Hall Jazz Band, Anders Osborne, Chuck Carbo, Spirit of New Orleans, Danish Radio Big Band, and many, many others. So welcome today, coming to us from Holland, over in the Netherlands. Welcome, Leroy Jones. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Paul. It's great to be here.
All right. Well, what an honor. And in honor of that, this is where Leroy and I met at the Mahogany Jazz Hall. So I figured I'd wear that. And thank you, sir, for being here. If you don't mind, we'll get into all your current stuff, what you're doing. And you're on a really amazing historical tour right now. So we're going to get to that. But what has always fascinated me is the culture of how you learn music in the New Orleans style. You know, that I have been blessed to be able to see the little kids with the old timers and everybody in between, all learning together and sharing and so on. So can you give us a little bit about your background and how you learned in that sort of culture?
Well, I grew up in a neighborhood surrounded by veteran musicians, the likes of guitarist Danny Barker, trumpeter Ernest Cagnolati, who was a trumpeter that played with the Preservation Hall Jazz Band during its early days in the early 1960s, and also Dave Fatman Williams, who was a pianist and wrote the traditional song, I Ate Up the Apple Tree. I started taking trumpet lessons at the age of 10 and also joining school band at that time. And so the first 2 years, I pretty much stuck to the books and played more what you would call orchestral music. And my first teacher was Sister Mary Hillary of the Archdiocese Music Program in New Orleans. I was at St. Leo, the grade school, elementary school. And my first instrument was actually guitar, but since it was a wind ensemble, I had to pick an instrument appropriate for that setting. And cornet was my first choice. My parents rented a cornet for me for a few months, and I made so much progress that my teacher told them to get that boy a trumpet. He's got some musical aptitude. So I started in band and played in honor bands, did auditions for the Louisiana Music Educators Association contests, and 1 year played baritone horn in a symphonic band. I hated that because I didn't like carrying the big case. I was accustomed to carrying a little cornet case. And I ended up playing with the brass bands of New Orleans during the time when there was a revival in 1970. I would have been 12 years old then, and Danny Barker happened to live around the corner from my house, from my parents' house. And the Fairview Baptist Church, the pastor of the Fairview Baptist Church wanted to organize a youth group to help keep youngsters out of trouble. Not that I was getting into any trouble at the time, but the church congregation did not have enough youngsters playing instruments appropriate for a brass band. So the pastor, knowing that Danny Barker was a professional musician and had connections within the musical circles in New Orleans, he asked him to round up some recruits for the band. And I happened to be one of the first recruits. And it got me interested in my cultural heritage and traditional music of New Orleans at a very early age. Ultimately, I would have been a musician, but I think if it were not for that experience of meeting Mr. Barker and the Fairview Baptist Church, becoming a part of the Fairview Baptist Church Christian Marching Band or the Fairview Brass Band, I would not have developed a passion for that particular genre of music at such an early age.
Isn't that funny how certain moments define us, in our career? I grew up, my first instrument was an accordion when I was real small. My mother was from Mexico, and in Mexico, that's a popular instrument, and so are trumpets. And just what you hear and the environments you get placed in have a profound effect on you throughout the rest of your life. So that's very cool. So then tell us a little bit about, because you're like in your dressing room getting ready to go on stage right now in just a little bit. So we thank you so much for being here with us and taking time out of your busy schedule there. But tell everybody what you're doing right now, because this is a really cool project.
What I'm doing now is I'm a special guest with the Dutch Swing College Band. Now, don't let the name throw you off. They're not college students, actually, professional musicians, a band that has been around for 75 years this year. So they're celebrating their 75th anniversary. And this is a tour that has been in the makings for over a year and a half now. I think we would have done it last year if it were not for the pandemic. So we postponed, and then finally we were able to do it. And they have also invited a drummer from New Orleans, Mr. Adonis Rose, who is the musical artistic director for the NOJO, New Orleans Jazz Orchestra, big band in New Orleans. And also they invited a clarinetist from Japan and an alto saxophonist from Thailand. And so we are the guests with the Dutch Swing College Band Ensemble, which consists of 6 musicians, guitar, banjo, drums, upright bass, and trumpet, tenor saxophone, and trombone. And so we started the tour actually in Winterthur, which is near Zurich. So I flew from New Orleans to Zurich and took a train up to Winterthur and did one concert that was outside of what we're doing right now, outside of this tour, because then after that performance, we drove all the way from Switzerland back up to the Netherlands. So that was my longest trip on this road tour. And so tonight, we're in a little town that's only an hour's drive from Amsterdam. And we've been playing concerts and doing workshops. And I did a master class in a workshop yesterday at the Conservatory of Amsterdam. And there were maybe 22 to 24 musicians that came out, majority of them trumpet players. So it was very nice. At one point during the master class, we had at least 15 trumpets on stage playing very nicely together on some blues.
All right.
So this is an historic tour for the Dutch Swing College Band, and I am honored to be a part of it, and for them to decide to bring me up here to be one of their featured guests.
That's really cool. And there are, like, I've toured in Holland and I've worked with some groups out there. Holland has a very high level of musicianship out there, right? The musicians are phenomenal.
There's some great players up here. And what we're trying to do is, and what the Dutch Swing College Band has been trying to do under the leadership of Audrey Brott, who is the bassist that has coordinated this whole thing, is to get young musicians and young listeners to appreciate traditional jazz as much as they appreciate and enjoy listening to contemporary sounds of today and modern jazz. And, particularly at the universities, of course, what they're teaching, and most universities, I think even in the United States, with maybe the exception of New Orleans, that some of the universities are starting jazz studies from 1950 onward and forgetting about what Louis Armstrong did, the works of Jelly Roll Martin and A.J. Piron and O.D.J.B. back at the beginning of the 20th century. So they're not repertory. This band is not a repertory ensemble, but they're playing traditional jazz the way it's still played in New Orleans. And I can tell you that they're doing a very good job of it. You would know that you're listening to a group of musicians who were born and raised in the EU, and in particularly here in the Netherlands. So it's a really fine ensemble.
And are they learning the traditional music in the traditional type of way?
Yes, they are. They've been listening. It's apparent that they have done their homework listening to records. They have sheet music for some arrangements that they desire that they don't have, or that they couldn't find recording for. And I'd say 2 or 3 of the guys have been to New Orleans. They have made the pilgrimage to the birthplace, and the others, if they haven't ventured that far south, they have definitely been to New York City, to the States. And of course, this is a group that has been, from its beginnings, was influenced by recordings that came over to Europe, and musicians from the United States who came over after the World War II and who stayed over in the Netherlands and Scandinavia and other European countries, just because it was better for them being there than being back in the U.S. of A.
Yeah, that's cool. I worked with and saw this great Dutch big band out there many years ago, and those guys had all gone to Cuba on an extended
exchange students, right?
Yeah, no, it wasn't that. Dang it, a sabbatical. They took it. They were. You can edit that out, Paul.
I had a sabbatical from 1920 to 21. I mean, 2020 to 2021.
Yeah, I know, right?
Pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah. But we didn't get to go to Cuba to study music. That's the difference, So they went out there for like 6 months, and it was the same thing when they came back to Holland. Even before they left, they were very studied in this music. If you closed your eyes, you'd think you were in Cuba hearing these guys, So, it's really important that we do understand the history of the music that we're playing and other musics, just for the fun of it, So tell us a little bit. I know you got this schedule going on. You're playing all over the place. What do you do? I mean, this is something that's important, I think, to everybody in our group. We like to look in and take a snapshot of what a person does to stay in shape on the trumpet, and maybe even in your personal life, just how you keep yourself healthy and all that when you're on the road. So what does your day consist of? Do you have kind of a routine that you do or not?
Well, I have a reputation for practicing every day. I think I slipped on that somewhat during the pandemic. I think a lot of musicians, instrumentalists, didn't get to or even have the desire to practice as much when you don't have any work at all. Although I love playing so much that I don't need to have gigs to have me motivated to put my horn on my face, pick my horn up and put it to my face. When I'm on the road here, first of all, I make sure that I remember to bring my Trump Corps stealth mute with me, because staying in a hotel, you cannot just blow your horn at liberty at most hotels. So when I know that I have a day off, then I can go through a full routine of running my skills and doing long tone exercises to keep my endurance up between sightseeing and new places, because I like to play the tourist part
definitely.
Sometimes and get to learn a little bit about the culture where I am. And I try to eat well. I don't indulge myself in alcohol. I don't do drugs. For me, when I'm on the road, I'm pretty much with this tour, I'm not playing very much. I would have to say that my horn is touching my face, if I'm lucky, 10 minutes each night, because I play 2 songs on the first set. And of course, that's with the rhythm section. And then I play 4 songs on the last set. So that's not very much playing. So I try to, during the daytime, long before we take off to go to sound check, et cetera, is to just to warm up and play do some flexibility exercises and a few long tones, and maybe run over some music that we need to have memorized by the 11th or the 12th of this month, because we're doing a shooting with the video and audio, and apparently it will look nicer if you don't have music stands in front of your body. So everyone's trying to memorize the arrangements that we've been playing. I did a few arrangements on some songs that I sing. For example, When It's Sleepy Time Down South, and When You're Smiling, and What a Wonderful World, and also an instrumental piece, Avalon, a new arrangement for 5 horns. And so actually, I should say 6 horns, just 2 trumpets, and then with trombone, clarinet, baritone sax, and tenor saxophone. And so today was the first day we really got to run that particular chart, and now it's sounding like it should sound, because we got together, we didn't rehearse and started, guys, we're just looking at the music, and we're spread out on stage, and we realized, of course, immediately, and after a few performance days, that we need to just focus and really tighten it up, especially if we're going to be ready towards the end of the tour, when we're going to make this recording. So that's pretty much my routine. When I'm off, if I have an off day, I practice. I try to practice for anywhere from 90 minutes to 2 hours. A bunch of different things, running over things, working on some new songs and everything of that nature. And then I put my horn away. If I have a gig later that evening, I try not to play too much, so that I'm not fatigued when I can come up and hopefully be more consistent with what I want to deliver.
Cool. And you've developed such a warm, beautiful, cuddly sound. What was your influence in that, and how did you develop that? Because it's not, the times that I've spent in New Orleans, there's a lot of guys that are just like that, all the time. And yours is so nice and melodic and easy to listen to all night long, which I, fortunately got to.
Oh man, thank you. I guess Paul and Bobby, that's maybe the reason for that is because I've often listened to other instrumentalists and tried to emulate the sounds of maybe a tenor saxophonist. I love listening to the Boss Tenor sessions with Sonny Stitt and Gene Ammons, and I'm just trying to play along with that. And I love playing the flugelhorn that I use occasionally. I didn't bring it with me on this tour, but I have played the flugelhorn a lot on many of my recordings, and I love the warm, mellow sound of that instrument. So when I'm playing the trumpet, I guess you could say that I approach playing the trumpet as you should manipulate the flugelhorn when you play. And some trumpeters who play the flugelhorn as if they were playing the trumpet, and some like almost overblow it.
Yeah.
And I think that, so what I guess I'm a flugelhorn player playing the trumpet, maybe, if that's a good description to make of it.
That's interesting. I just got back from doing a bunch of performances in Nashville, and I knew there was only maybe 1 or 2 songs that I was going to have to use a flugelhorn on. And so I talked to the band leader and everything, because we were in the back in the horn section, everything's mic'd and all that. And we're at the point where it's hard to start lugging stuff around, And so I have a mouthpiece that I've actually have never used live until this show. And it's made by Bob Reeves. And I don't know if you're even aware of this. I wasn't for a long time, but they make a mouthpiece that's for trumpet, and it's all figured out. So you put this mouthpiece in your trumpet, but it's like a flugelhorn mouthpiece, and it plays so even, and it sounds is close. I mean, you're never going to be 100% flugelhorn, but boy, it's as close as you can imagine. And I heard some recordings of it, and I could hear it in my monitor. And even the other guys turned around. They were like, "Man, did you get another horn?" "No, I just got this other mouthpiece." So I didn't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's a really cool mouthpiece.
No, I haven't heard. Of course, I've heard about reeds, but I've never heard of that mouthpiece. Now, and I can understand that if you probably got a really deep cup on that, right? Because my flugelhorn mouthpiece is I play Antoine Courtois flugelhorn, and so it has a mouthpiece, and it looks more like a French horn mouthpiece. The backbore is really small, like a French horn mouthpiece, but the cup is very deep. It's a 5D minus. It's a Courtois, so it's a really deep cup. But then the circumference around the rim is it's like a French horn, so it requires a bit more puckering to get the lips in there, but it gives it gives that sound. My trumpet mouthpiece, basically, I play on what's equivalent to a Bach 3C. So that's what I've been playing on for the past couple decades, and so I'm comfortable with that. I don't change it. So. And of course, now I'm playing Harrison trumpets. I think my horn is what is called a brushed brass finish, so it has no lacquer and it has no plating, and I think it contributes to the warmer sound that I'm able to get on there, as opposed to playing a silver-plated horn or a nickel-plated horn.
Is that a heavy horn as well?
It is. It is heavy. It's twice as heavy as a conventional trumpet.
Okay.
That took a little getting used to also, because before that, for about 12 to 15 years, I played on a Selma chorus, which was lovely with the brushed matte finish and a lovely horn. So it took me a couple months to really feel comfortable behind the wheel of a house and after driving a Selma.
Did you have to lift weights and stuff to get in shape to do a 4-hour gig with that?
No, I didn't actually. I didn't. But I tell you one thing: until I got that modular mouthpiece, the 5mm that he makes that fits flush into the receiver, where it looks like the mouthpiece is connected to the lead pipe. That made all the difference in the world, because I had a heavy wall, like an imitation of a heavy wall Bach mouthpiece. But because of the weight of the horn, the balance didn't feel quite right with that mouthpiece. Now with the 5mm, it's much heavier, and so it feels more balanced from the point of contact to the edge of the bell.
That's interesting. Well, I'm sure you sound good on no matter what you play, but it's nice to have something we're comfortable with, that becomes and sometimes it's not only the sound, but it is the feeling, of the horn and the resistance, and does it match your style? And, sometimes we got to play really loud and hard, and other times we need to play more intimately. And sometimes people like Paul and I myself at times switch gear, mouthpieces and horns just to cover those a little bit better. But you're you're like a soloist, so you have your sound. So that's really interesting.
Thanks, man. It's like driving the car. You're going to drive the same way. It just feels different behind the wheel. There's a distinction between driving a Rolls Royce and driving a Volkswagen. So I guess in some respects, I'm driving a Rolls Royce now.
Well, that's good. We all play our own way. We all got to find our own way, and this is one of the things that Paul and I almost preach about. There's so many theories about playing, so many theories about horns and equipment. But at the end of the day, you can practice all these things and stuff, but you have to remember what works for you and discard the rest of the stuff, because just because something works for Leroy Jones, it doesn't mean it's going to work for me or Paul or anybody else, and vice versa, right?
That's very true.
So after your video recording coming up, what did you say on the 11th? What's your schedule looking like now? Are things opening up? You know, are we seeing the end of COVID for you, hopefully?
Well, I hope it's, well, I can tell you that I don't think we're seeing the end of COVID, but things are picking up again because restrictions are coming down on all levels, even over here in Southern Europe. And also I've been following the news and of course, along with reports that I get from home from my wife, letting me know what's happening there. And so there have been more calls for gigs, private engagements and for dates, club dates and some things that were canceled a year or so ago are coming about again. So it's a good thing. I'm optimistic, at least for the most part. I'm very optimistic about the future and gigs because it was not a very happy time, between March 2020 and practically the beginning of this year, 22. It was, in a word, depressing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough for all of us. Yeah, definitely. Well, it's good that things are picking up, and it's good that you're out there and get able to travel. And we hope you stay really safe and all that stuff. We know you're limited on time, and you're going to get on stage here in just a little bit. So we'll have to bring you back for part 2 to learn more, even more about you in the future. But we want to say thank you very much for being here with us and taking time out of your busy schedule today.
Oh, Bobby and Paul, thank you for having me on board. And, hopefully we can hook up in person rather than virtually in the very near future again. And I'm very honored and flattered that you all chose me to be one of your interviewees.
Well, it's been our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Bobby.
Okay.
Bye.